Hey,
I've
Roger.
learned. Hello, Mike. How you doing?
Doing all right. It's good to catch up with you again.
Yeah, it's been a while. Just want to, thank you for those of you that are tuning in. We want to thank you for taking the time for the next 20 minutes, half hour, however long it is, to listen to Mike and I talk about our journeys. I think we're two somewhat different journeys, but bottom line is we're both diabetics, and we both have the same struggles, and we have the same things that we have to deal with to one extent or the other. But Mike, why don't you start off sharing with people your story, where your diet about your diabetes journey, and where you've come from and where you're at today.
I hope everybody has about 90 minutes, but okay, I'll get started. I'll get started from the simplest point. Hey, everybody, I'm Michael Donohoe. I live up in the Finger Lakes outside of Rochester in a little town called Bloomfield, New York. Now, a lot of people think that's New Jersey, but that's actually where I'm from. And that's where Roger and I were getting our connection from, is our Jersey background. So, living with diabetes 26 years. I've had it since I was 28 years old. You can do the math. Diabetes, unfortunately, is the family curse, and it's primarily genetics with us. And it's type of thing where it's been a struggle. I've had a lot of failures. I deal with a good mix of chronic illnesses tied into it, as well as other issues. So I'm sure we'll get into them. But it's quite interesting, and every day is different. And some days you wake up, it's a good day, things are going well. Sometimes you hit 3 o'clock, it's lousy. And then when you have 26 years of them, there's a lot there. So I can't wait to hear also, Roger's story as well, and we'll banter here, and you'll get a lot out of it, we hope.
Sure.
Roger, to you.
So, for those of you who've never met me or never heard of me, I'm Roger Hare. Was diagnosed in June of 2019, so I'm a newbie compared to Mike in terms of my journey. But I'm type 2. I'm not insulin dependent. I'm strictly on metformin right now, 2,000 milligrams, 1,000 twice a day. Also take Lipitor like everyone else does for preventative for cholesterol and heart. But my journey, it is hereditary to some extent. I have grandmothers on both sides of my family that have had it, that have had issues with diabetes. But for me, it just woke up one day, started, biggest thing for me was my eyesight. I'm wearing, progressive eyeglasses now. Never had, up until about 3 years ago, never had glasses before in my life. Everyone said, "Oh, you're in." I'm 48 now, but they said, "Oh, you're in your 40s. Welcome to the club." Everyone gets glasses when eyesight always goes when and started piecing that together with extremely lethargic, tired all the time. I was the time I was working. I had gotten a new job and to de-stress my life, and I started driving Uber and Lyft on Friday and Saturday nights. To make up some of the loss of income, and found myself, I was extremely tired. I'd come home at 12:30 at night and would sleep until noontime, 1 o'clock the next day, and wouldn't have any time to spend with my family. My 7-year-old daughter, I'm married. My daughter's she'll be 8 next week, in a week and a half. But so between being extremely lethargic, eyesight going, and also extremely thirsty, I found myself, I was drinking 4 or 5 bottles of water at night when I was driving. Mm-hmm. I stayed out of, I'm 15 minutes from Center City, Philadelphia. I would stay out of Philadelphia because where do you go to the bathroom when you're driving? When you're drinking 4 or 5 bottles a night, where do you go? And so put all those things together, had a family member whose husband was diabetic, and they told me to go get checked out. And so that's when I realized my A1C went from like a 6.1, 6.2, jumped up to 12.7. And so that was a little bit of an eye opener, but it's one day at a time. It's, I tell people my journey it's a marathon. It's not a sprint.
Exactly.
A lot of people try to, when they're first diagnosed, to get real overwhelmed and try to do everything to the T and dot every I and cross every T. And, I have to eat sugar free. I can't, they starve themselves because they're afraid of eating stuff that they think are bad for them. And meanwhile, they just, they go from 0 to 60 in 30 seconds and then realize, 6 months from now they fail. I'm like, well, it's like I said, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. But look forward to talking to you, Mike, and getting into the nitty gritty and talking to people about our challenges. I think it's good for people to know that we're human, that we're all fighting the same battle, and we all have the same challenges. It's not, we're not out there, doing this on our own.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is, and I think you hit the point perfect, because even I had open heart surgery due to a leaky valve 7 years ago, and one of the things that there were a couple things that drove me back to years of pretending I wasn't living with diabetes. And what happened was a couple simple things. I'd be walking in Manhattan down to the PATH trains, and I couldn't breathe. I was losing my wind. I was also noticing I was sitting at a computer and I was really not able to see the screen. As we were starting to get my crap together, I came to find out I had diabetic retinopathy. Next thing I know, I have a 10.0 A1C and I was in congestive heart failure. But the funny part is, I think you said something so key. I ended up bringing my A1C. I think it was checked almost monthly from that point, which is a little ridiculous, but they were doing tracking. And I was down to a 6.3, I think, by the time I had surgery. That's great, but it was exactly what you just said, 0 to 60. So, life is not really fair that way. And I think one of the key points with diabetes is making choices. And, it's almost jumping all the way to the end of our conversation, but the reason I'm bringing it back is the only way to make choices is to educate yourself and to learn to be patient and to forgive yourself. When I speak to any groups, I make it very clear about my own journey. I said, diabetes is simple. You do five simple things, and if you work on these, you'll be in control. But again, it has to start with yourself. The first one simply is nutrition. I hate to say diet, but nutrition. How you're eating, what you're eating. Exercises too, the way you move, how much you move. Moving is so key in so many ways for your health. Third one is having a good health team. And a little later on, I have a good analogy for that too. But listening to your physicians, working with your specialists, taking your meds, taking your insulin, doing what you need to do, and even more so at that point, give feedback. Explain what's going right, what's going wrong. And then the two that people always forget, and they're so important. I've actually started measuring both of these items. Got a Garmin on my wrist. Is sleep and stress. I know for me, if I don't get 7 hours of sleep, my blood sugar could go all over the place, or I start getting very thirsty or whatever. And the last one is stress. And I have 5 kids. Roger mentioning a 7-year-old. It's like my kids are 17 to 25. But let me tell you, it's like I had those guys ages 8 to 2 when I went through a divorce. That was not good on my diabetes. Let's just say. So, but yeah, I remind myself of those 5 things every day. And I also remember that I can forgive myself for my failures, because guess what? Tomorrow's going to come. And when it doesn't, who cares?
I think it's extremely important that you forgive yourself.
Yeah.
I've talked to many people. I've had opportunities to share my stories, and a lot of people, especially newly diagnosed diabetics, depending on where you're at, I'm fortunate, in the area, being right outside of Philadelphia here in South Jersey. We're an hour and a half from some of the best hospitals in New York. I'm 15 minutes from some of the best hospitals in Philadelphia. And I'm privileged to have access to, I could probably pick from 30 different endocrinologists, all within a 15, 20-minute driving distance of my house.
Right.
I acknowledge that that's not like that in other parts of the country. I don't know how far you are away from your doctors up in the Finger Lakes, but, our company has an office that I work for has an office in Oklahoma City. It takes, some places in Oklahoma, it takes them 2 hours just to see a family doctor. And so their support system is different than what I have, but it's extremely important to understand that when you fall and when you fall down, you pick yourself back up and don't beat yourself upside the head over it. Tomorrow's a new day. As long as you have more wins than you have losses, consider it a good thing. But for me, one of the things that I had to go through, and it helped me in the beginning, is creating a support network around you that holds you accountable. people ask one of the things that people ask me is, why do you do what you do? Why are you an advocate? Why are you involved in
Mhm.
I've been on TV. I've been, I started out writing articles for Gannett newspapers here in New Jersey and Pennsylvania about my journey. I do all of it. I tell people I'm selfish. It's a selfish reason why I do it. It's because I can't talk about getting my diabetes under control if I'm not doing it.
Right.
So it
Exactly.
kind of holds me accountable. But I also realize that I'm human, and we all have failures. And one of the things that my endocrinologist said to me when I first got diagnosed, I got diagnosed in June. By September, my A1C went from 12.7 down to 6.3. I lost 40 pounds. My fasting glucose went from 283 down to I think it was like 94.
Mhm.
When I was diagnosed, my cholesterol fell off the face of the earth. I was doing everything great. But she said to me, she said, Roger, I'm kind of concerned. She said, are you going to be able to sustain this?
Right.
And I always said, well, if I want to see my daughter walk down the aisle when she grows old, I don't have a choice.
Yeah.
Fast forward the pandemic, world shuts down. One of the decisions I made at that point in time, I wasn't going to stress over my diet in terms of, there's certain foods you couldn't get. The prices were through the roof and availability. You go to the grocery store and there was no chicken there. I kind of said to myself, at least for the first 3 to 6 months of the pandemic, that if I had to eat some pasta once in a while, I would. If I had to eat some potatoes once in a while, I would. I figured that the stress would do more harm to my blood sugars
Yeah. I did the same thing.
than my diet. And I think a lot of us did. And so what was the result? My A1C jumped up a little bit. For a year and a half, 2 years, my A1C was 6.3, 6.5, 6.8, back down to 6.3. Even through the pandemic, I think the highest it was 6.8. But I got lazy. At the end of last year, beginning of this year, and May of this year, my A1C jumped up to 8.5. And my doctor asked me that question again. He said, Roger, I'm going to ask you the question again. I'm concerned. Are you going to be able to sustain this? And you know what she said to me? She took one look at me and said, it's okay if you can't.
Isn't that great? When you have an endocrinologist who understands that, that's key.
Exactly. She said, it's okay if you can't. We have other medications that if we need to change up your medication and help support things. Now, do I want to be on medication? No. Do I want to be on 2,000 milligrams of metformin? Do I want to be on other things? No, I don't think. I mean, you can speak to that. Do you want to be on it? No, you don't. But you know what? If that's what it's got to take, it was actually a huge relief when she said to me, "It's okay if you can't." And that's when I started looking at this whole process this journey as it being a marathon, not a sprint.
And that's you've hit that one so well, because I think that's really the point of life, is that when you when you do that sprinting also, you tend to miss things. You can obsess over diabetes. You can take too much on. You can, it's. I've done it. I've done it both ways. Like I said, I deal with neuropathy in my hands and feet. I deal with diabetic retinopathy, and that's where Roger and I, within the eye challenges is an area, that we both share. I deal with this cardiovascular disease, chronic kidney disease. And I mean, there's a few more things I can go on with, but it's like, the point is too, again, I forgive myself for the things I did, because, a key thing was my mental health wasn't in the best spot. I'd gone through a divorce, work opportunities were not working the way it was, etc. I was coming into a new marriage and I wasn't taking care of myself the way I should have. And that, it's like when you're in denial, denial will kill you. So the thing is taking on these things. A key thing, though, I want to move with one comment that you said, Roger, was about your endocrinologist. Rochester actually is a very strong medical community, and I've been very fortunate. It was I think the third best hospital for open heart surgery in the state of New York, behind two in the city. But the thing is, I found a very good PCP. I don't go to an endocrinologist, surprisingly, but my PCP is really strong in diabetes and handles it well. But then I have, like I said, the cardiologist, the nephrologist, the ophthalmologist, and I have a lot of ist in my life. The thing is, I once came up with the thought, and for you football fans, you'll like this, I hope. I thought about this. I said, I'm kind of like the quarterback of the team with my head coach yelling at me, going, all right, Michael, pass the ball, throw the ball, walk the ball, whatever. Type of thing is, as long as I have my PCP as really my head coach, he sits there. He's my main guy within the, we use my chart. Main guy.
Yeah, I love my chart. Absolutely love my chart.
Information is, it's amazing when I go in and he's like, he says to me, he's like, when you come in for an appointment, it takes you 20 minutes to get to me. He says, that's when I look at all the things that have happened over the last 3 months, because I make sure even the doctors who are not under the University of Rochester system, they make sure that items get into my doctor, and they make sure at that point they're put in and attached and filed. So the thing is, and where I'm going there is, for you, it's and me, it's and everybody on the call, it's not about the players who are around you, because some of them can be very detrimental to your own success. Could be coworkers, family members, doesn't matter who it is, a neighbor. But the thing is, you listen to your coach. You get a great coach, and you listen to the other coaches. And the thing is, that's when you become a winner. So when you become a superstar, there is no superstar in anything without the support system of those who can advise and mentor, like a head coach. So the thing is, I agree, though. I don't want anybody to think that I'm saying, oh, you should go to a PCP. You either find a great PCP or you go to an endocrinologist, find a great endocrinologist.
The one thing that, there's a question that says, why does one need an endocrinologist? If you have a family doctor that you feel is treating you, and Michael, it sounds like you have a great one.
I'm fortunate.
You're very fortunate.
Mm-hmm.
One of the reasons why you would want an endocrinologist is, it's kind of like this is their specialty, right? I mean, you can have someone that has their hands in everything. A lot of times, from what I've heard and hearing people talk with the ADA, is a lot of times these family doctors. I actually had one that was no help whatsoever in the very beginning. It was my family doctor that originally did my blood workup. I had already made an appointment with the endocrinologist, but I had to go to him to get the initial blood work, and he calls me in right away and he says, "Okay, you're diabetic. What are you going to do about it?" Okay, doc, well, I don't know. Why don't you tell me? I said, I highly doubt with an A1C of 12.7 that diet and exercise alone is going to get it down to where you want it to be. So, why don't you tell me? Not supportive whatsoever. Just basically told me, oh, go exercise, eat better, and come back and see me in 3 months. I encourage you today. If that's your family doctor today, get a new one. That's the struggle a lot of people have. You're very fortunate when it comes to, and quite honestly, you could have that same experience with endocrinologists. It doesn't have to be just a family doctor that, right. But bottom line is, a lot of these older family doctors that have been around for a very long time think that they've seen it all, they've done it all. But a lot of times their education about diabetes came in medical school. So much has evolved, and so the technology and the insulin and everything's, that they may not know everything, but guess what? An endocrinologist, it's their job to know all the ins and outs of all the new processes, the new drugs, the new insulin. I have this sitting on my desk because I had to go at lunch today to pick it up. I have a CGM. Your family doctors don't know everything that's up, but guess what? Endocrinologists know it, and so. If you have the opportunity, if you live near one, or if you're within driving distance, like I said, but for a lot of people around this country, it's their family doctors that are treating it. And I can't tell you how many times I've had conversations with people that they are newly diagnosed. Their doctor hasn't given them any advice on what to eat. They haven't referred them to a nutritionist. They haven't, they're out there on an island by themselves and they have no clue where to begin. And I blame that on the doctor. The doctor, that's where, if that's you, if that's your experience, I really encourage it. If you have the opportunity, you can find it. It's up to you to take control of your condition and your disease, and it's up to you to find if you're not getting the support you need, you deserve the support, and it's up to you to find someone that'll give you that support.
I'm gonna say, let me grab it from there because you actually gave me a great segue holding up your CGM. I'm on a CGM as well, and the thing is, the point for me, my insurance company said, "Hey, you want to do 10 sessions with a certified diabetes educator?" Yeah, I worked with a nutritionist 2 years ago when I found out about the CKD. Why not? They're going to pay for it. Let's go for it. I got on with this individual, and she was great. And, we confirmed I was on insulin and things like that. She says to me, after about, I think, half of our calls, "Do you use a CGM?" I said, "No, I'm still using, Freestyle Light," which I actually really love for a small one. Those are great. But I said, "No." She said, "They changed the rules again." They said, if you are on insulin, and if you're type 2, it's always a challenge if you're a type 2, which makes ridiculous sense to me. But the thing is, if you're on insulin, you will qualify for, getting a CGM. Now, it's been more than once. I like I said, I praised my PCP, but this is where ownership is. I went back to him and I said, "Hey, doc." No, actually, no. I sent him a note on my chart. As a matter of fact, I didn't call him. I said, "Hey, CDE says I can get this because I'm on insulin." He's like, "Oh, no." I said, "Can we just send the script in?" I had the CGM in a day. So the thing is also, and another thing in the thought process, I have actually, insulin somewhere in here. There we go. This is the short acting. I'm on long acting as well. It's also important to understand that, insulin the original insulin just passed 100 years last year. So insulin's been around 100 years and has saved pretty much every type 1's life in the world. And it has really assisted a lot of those living with type 2. But understand there is a myriad of older drugs, like myself and Roger both being on 2,000 milligrams of metformin. That's the top level you can take for safety reasons. But the thing is that my doctor said to me, he has such a plethora of old drugs, new drugs, information that's coming out, the ADA with the scientific sessions. There's a lot of information that is shared during that time. And there's a lot of groups nationally. And it's also, I know the CDC's doing a lot, and then NIH. The thing is that information that's shared also gives us the opportunities to figure out new ways, even with old things. Yep. Sometimes the new things are better, but I've been both ways. I've actually been on some newer stuff. I've been on some older meds. I've been on a couple supplements, just to help with the neuropathy. But yeah, this is the life of those living with diabetes, is very stressful. It's like, I love the old saying, and a lot of type 1s say this, it's like having a second job. It's like having another full-time job. It's okay if you feel that way, that you have another full-time job. And, the one area that we haven't brought up, though, Roger, and I do think we need to at least hit upon this, is we talk about physical health so much, but we don't talk about mental health. Mm-hmm. And one of the issues that's key with diabetes, and I have spoken this many times too, is that diabetes will amplify any other condition you have. That includes mental health. I deal with general anxiety disorder and, of all things, ADD. 54 and I have ADD. What the heck? So, and I realized I was down in Philadelphia a couple of weeks ago. I realized I may have social anxiety disorder. So that's
Philadelphia will do that to you. Philadelphia will do that to you.
Philadelphia. I love Philadelphia. I worked in there for 2 years, but you're right. It was kind of crazy, and I was down at the convention center. So mental health is key, and we all know coming out of the pandemic, we hope and pray we never have to go through that again, and we learned a lot. But it is the type of thing where realize that if your blood sugar is all over the place, your mind is going to be all over the place. It also means same things if it's too low. Your brain can do some really wild things. This is why control is key. You want to be within that safe range. I'll toss it back to you, Roger, because I think the mental health and the pandemic stuff is great because you alluded to it earlier on your eating.
Yeah, no, I had a conversation with someone about a month ago. Spent good afternoon just going back and forth, and you bring up the mental health. and the subject came up of what are we doing to invest in ourselves,
Right.
you know, and whether it's mentally, whether it's physically. And it's extremely important that we invest in ourselves. Investing in ourselves today pays dividends in the future. You know, if it's getting our mental health under control, if it's getting our stress under control, only, quite honestly, we'll reap the benefits from that in the future, right? And one of the things that I was asked is, what are you doing to invest in yourself? And I started thinking, I'm like, you know, I mean, I'm fortunate to have good insurance. You know, it's not just necessarily about financial investing, but you know, part of it has a financial component to it. And you know, we were just talking about CGNs. I'm type 2 non-insulin, so guess what? You know, I don't qualify for this. All right. But I started realizing, you know, I participated in a Dexcom research study last summer, and so of course you get the Cadillac, and you want the Cadillac, and you want to hold out until the doctors tell you can get the Cadillac, right? There's a reason why this one in the yellow box is probably the most prescribed CGM in the world. All right, it does basically the same thing that the Dexcom does. All right, but you know, there's a website. It's the same color. I'm not going to mention who it is because we're on the ADA, you know, the ADA's call, but there's a website that you can get coupons when you don't have insurance. All right. Guess what? I downloaded a coupon. I said, you know what? It's time for me to stop waiting for insurance to pay for it. You know, I moved some things around in my budget. It's cost me $200 for 6 sensors. It's basically a 3-month supply. You know, it's basically what, $60, $70 a month. You know, I don't need the insurance because, quite honestly, my test strips that I get 100 of them.
Right. Do the math there, right?
You know, I mean, it's so it's a little bit more, but guess what? I've been doing this for about 3 months. I just went and picked up my second batch today, and I'll tell you what, this is a godsend. You know, that for you to be able to make real time decisions when you're eating. You know, you go out to eat, and you know. I can't tell you because my sensor expired this morning, and so I went at lunchtime and got it and figured I'd wait. You know, and quite honestly, this is the selfish part. You know, this is the crazy part. You know, talking about there's always tomorrow and it's a marathon. Mentally, for a mental break, you know what I said? I'm not going to put it on until I get home after dinner, so that I can spend a half a day eating something for lunch, whatever I want to eat for lunch, and not have to worry about what the numbers are. You know, so it's sitting here, and I figured, you know, I'll wait until I get home and I'll put it on, you know, and I'll go back to, you know, it's just what it is. And but I think it's extremely important that you whether it's finding ways to de-stress your life, whether it's, you know, if you can financially afford something like this, you know. I always thought that, quite honestly, these things were $1,000. At Dexcom, if you were to pay for it out of pocket for 3 months, it would be $1,000. You know, I would have gotten this a long time ago if I knew I could get this for 200.
Right. Yeah, and that's the thing. It's the Dexcom is so set up for type 1 and to tie into pumps and things like that. The nice thing that they call the Libre a flash. So it's type of thing where it's not really measuring all the time. And if you don't check it within a certain point, you'll get breaks. And I mean, it's like I don't know if I could even get it seen, but I have a break somewhere in here. Nah, we're not going to get it. But there's a break in there because I didn't, check soon enough. So I have an alarm on there. And I've learned also high blood glucose, 3 beeps, low blood glucose, 4 beeps. So when it's going off at 4 o'clock in the morning, you know. And it's funny, though, with you saying that, the main reason I did use, by the way, like we mentioned earlier, it's like we're both focused on diabetes advocates for the ADA. And again, our stories are different, and we're in with a lot of people with type 1 diabetes. So that's what's an interesting story. Even though they found out about their diabetes early, there are some people that still deal with issues just because of the way our bodies are made. And I think your point about is perfect, because it's like I ended up having cataracts this summer. I have diabetic retinopathy. I get shots in the eyes. Yes, I said it. I'm sorry, but I said it. But luckily, if you control your blood sugar, there's usually about a lag. If you're off for like 3 months, it takes about 3 months for it to pick up, and your eyes will start having some bleeding in the back. the thing is, my diabetes decided to also go after my lenses. I ended up getting cataracts. And I sit there and said the heart surgery at 47. I ended up having cataracts at 54. Right. I started getting so bad. I had astigmatism. They said, hey, you want to spend the extra money and we can fix that astigmatism. The astigmatism has lived in my family's life forever. Everybody has it. Yeah. So I don't have it anymore. But then as I was telling this story before we came on, I said, uneven lensing. And then I realized, I'm like, wait, my left eye, everything's green. Why is everything green? Went to the doctor, said, why is everything green? She said, I'm scheduling for the second surgery. So the thing is, I think the thing I'm saying here more than anything else, even though it sounds crazy to say this, you got to give yourself breaks. You got to forgive yourself, but you have to kind of take the BS in stride. I'm not saying you have to quote unquote accept it, because if you accept it, then you'll do nothing about it.
Right.
But you have to take it in stride, and you have to say, okay, well, this is what I need to do. And, especially, and this is even like people who say, one point about stride, I'll just throw out is like, we talked about insulin. Most people think T1s are like the only ones using insulin. Basically, less than 10% of everybody with diabetes has type 1. The other 90% have primarily type 2. 2/3 of those who have type 2, I'm sorry, 2/3 of those who use insulin are people with type 2 diabetes. Yeah. So you have to make choices that maybe they not, and I'm having this with my 83-year-old mother. She might have to go onto insulin, but she has that old style thought. I'm like, look, it's a pen. You stick it in and you're done. Yeah. It sounds a little crazy to me. I watched my half-blind father who had a stroke sitting there in the 90s trying to do a needle. The guy had an amazing brain because he was a Bell Labs engineer. He had more challenges figuring out what his dosage was. So, the thing is, the tools we have today, if your doctors will approve them, if your insurance will approve them. Hey, I'm a big guy who I'm going to start the fight in January to improve our insulin situation here in the state of New York. And who knows, maybe I'll end up in Pennsylvania, New Jersey before you know it. But that's the thing, is making those decisions and to do it. And Roger, it's like, the one thing, yeah. Can you share a little bit about your, a little bit more about your eye experience? Are you, been okay? Or
I have to tell you, I've kind of been, being involved, being one of the first 3 eye health champions, healthy eye champions for the ADA. I kind of feel like I don't have a big story. I don't have a lot to contribute, just simply because you like yourself, you have retinopathy. There's Natalie who's had the eye shots and all this stuff, and it's like, aside from getting these glasses, I don't have anything. I don't have retinopathy. I don't have, I don't get the eye shots. I don't have any of that. I don't have glaucoma. I don't have any, I have family history of glaucoma in the family? Yes, I do. My grandfather was one of the first, I think, 5 people in the country at Wills Eye Hospital in Philadelphia to have his corneas replaced, the cornea implants. So but then again, I called it early enough.
Yes, you did.
So that's my part of the story, is I'm the success in catching it early enough. I've so far haven't had to deal with the complications.
Mm-hmm.
If I had waited, quite honestly, if it was just my eyesight and I wasn't lethargic, I would have never thought it was diabetes. I would have thought it was my age.
Right.
One of the things I do know, I can tell by my eyesight when my sugars are high. I
can too. And that's very true. And I don't know if anybody out there has that same sense, but even my father, when he found out about his diabetes, where did he find out about him? 1977, in the eyes. Yeah. This is, you're right. But the one point you said that was really key, and we'll go back. I said diabetes 1996. I said, it was good till 2006, went through the divorce, kind of floated around there, New York, Philly, whatever, wherever I was at that time. And I let it go to crap. It was me. It wasn't something. It was my lack of action. I don't even want to say discipline, because discipline is such a lousy word. It was really my lack of action and doing the things I needed to do. And, I think it's something that you know, when people say it's easy, oh, or my favorite, I think everybody loves this. Can you eat that? Is that piece of candy? Get past that. And those people, you just go, do I educate them or do I walk away and just continue to try working? And so, some of the hardest people in your life are those who are closest to you. You know,
Yeah,
I hear too much just within my circle.
One of the things I hate,
yeah,
is when people think that diabetics have to eat sugar-free.
Yeah.
You don't realize sugar-free sometimes is the worst thing you could be eating.
Yep, and can spike.
You know, and so one of my last stories I'm gonna share, and it was an experience I had just recently. You know, you talk about diving into the details and educating yourself. You know, I love to bake. I haven't really baked since I haven't really done a whole lot since I've been diagnosed. But back at the beginning of October, we had some real cold, damp rain. And it was a Saturday, and I think it was when the Hurricane Ian or whatever was coming up through up the coast, and it was just we were getting the remnants of it. And I'm like, I want pumpkin bread. My mom grew up. My mom would make a good pumpkin bread, so I found a recipe. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to replace it with almond flour. I went out and bought almond flour, and I did stevia. All right. What? Nothing wrong with stevia, right? And of course, I buy the store branded. In our neck of the woods, we have ShopRite as a grocery store, and Wegmans up near you would have the same thing. You buy the store brand. All right.
Absolutely.
I come home. They say stevia in baking is 1-for-1 relationship. So they called for a cup and a half, I think, of sugar. So I put a cup and a half and a stevia in it. I ate one slice. My sugars jumped to like 225 in the first half hour. One slice. So I started like, well, the almond flour is not going to do that. So I started looking at the ingredients of the stevia. Store branded stevia. What's the first ingredient? Maltodextrin.
Yep.
And dextrose. All right. For those of you that don't know, it's a form of it's a form of sugar. It comes from corn syrup. It comes from corn. All right. The glycemic index for maltodextrin and dextrose is almost twice as much as regular sugar.
Yes.
I think the glycemic index value of regular sugar is like 65. Maltodextrin, I think, was like 120.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, when you're doing it in little packets, it's not enough. It doesn't have, so it comes back to the education. I'm reading that label, but I'm also learning the difference between glycemic index and glycemic load. All right. When you're taking one packet of that and putting it in a cup of coffee, there's not enough of it to spike your sugar. The load on your system is not great enough. But when you put a cup and a half of it in a pumpkin bread,
bam.
Bam. So it's important to know that sugar substitutes aren't always better for you. Now, you looked at some of the more name branded stevias. You have your erythritol in it instead of the maltodextrin, which doesn't spike your sugars. So what I've learned is if I'm going to bake with stevia, I'm going to do it with a Truvia brand or some other brand that's not a store brand.
That's a great example.
So sometimes it's better to have sugar, just less of it. Mm-hmm. If you're baking and it calls for 2 cups, maybe you just put a cup of sugar in it. And instead of eating a slice of pumpkin bread this thick, maybe you eat a slice this thin. It's all about choices. And so I cringe when people say, "Oh, you're diabetic. Oh, do you want me to get you something sugar free?" No, I said, quite honestly, I want the same thing you're eating. I'm just not going to having the CGM. My blood sugars are 110 right now. You know what? Maybe I splurged a little bit. Maybe it's okay. But if it's 160 or 180, guess what? I'm not having it.
Yeah, and you're right. When you have the insulin, especially I'm on long acting, what's called basal, and short acting, which is called bolus. The thing is when you're on a bolus, you'll hear a lot of times, again, T1's talking about the bolus. It's easy to go, I want that. But if I hit 250, I can have 7 units of this and it'll knock it right down. And the thing is, that's hard also. I think coming past Halloween is a great point, is you were mentioning the sugar to other things. I've done this test on myself. Try having like 4 little, what used to be fun size or candy of chocolate, And then maybe a day later, try 1 cup of pasta. What do you think is going to be worse? It is going to be the cup of pasta. And the reason why, if you have straight white flour pasta, it's gonna go up spike, it's gonna hang, maybe bubble a little back and forth, and then finally, if you do something, it'll start dropping. With candy bars, and you should look at my numbers like leading up to Halloween. It's kind of like up, down, up, down, up, down. And the reason why is the body, even with diabetes, will process the white sugar, the simple sugar, faster. Doesn't mean, like I said, don't do the test. I just gave you the information. It's trust me. It's like I'm totally here with Roger about making sure, you it's pretty much almost reading the labels, but it's understanding the label.
And quite honestly, it took me 2.5, it took me 3 years.
Yeah.
I mean, I just found this out a month ago, and I'm like, why didn't I know it before? One real quick lesson: pasta, homemade fresh pasta, at least for me, because it doesn't. It's the starches, regular box pasta. You're cooking it for 10, 12 minutes, the starches come out, and that's what causes the carbs and the sugar spikes and all that stuff. Fresh homemade pasta. I walked into an Italian place in the South, in the Italian market in South Philly, right? And it was during the way, people. Yeah, it was Superior Pasta. They closed their doors after the pandemic, but the old guy that I used to go in there all the time, and I said to him, I said, I can't eat your pasta anymore, but there was a port wine marinara sauce that I wanted for a recipe. And he said, oh, my pasta is low glycemic. I'm like, nah, what are you talking about? I said, I'm telling you. He said, you don't cook it long enough. You're only cooking fresh pasta for 90 seconds. And it's not enough time to get and so he said, he gave me a pound of pasta for free. And he said, you go home and test yourself. Test yourself right before and wait 2.5, 3 hours later and test it again. Mm-hmm. Now, you can't eat a pound of it at a time. The problem is the pasta is a half a cup. Who eats just a half a cup? You still got to eat it in moderation. But you know what? My blood sugars were like 112 right before I ate it. I was doing good that day. It was 113 2.5 hours later.
Yeah. Did you do any exercise before that? Just wondering.
No, I for whatever reason, I don't, and maybe it was, maybe I did it. I mean, it's been a while. It's been 2 years since I did that test.
But your point is true. It is very true.
But I do know exercise, people are asking, what do you do to get your sugars down? Exercises, if your blood sugar jumps through the roof, there's 2 things that you do: drink a lot of water and go take a walk.
Exactly.
Those are the 2 things that if my sugar spikes after dinner, I go take a walk. There's a walking trail. The neighborhood around us, it's like a mile-long walking circle around the neighborhood. I go take a mile walk, and I meanwhile I have a bottle of water in my hand. I drink, and by the time I come home, the blood sugars are dropped. So
that's the key point. You're right. That's something like that. I think that is, if there was a major takeaway from everything we said today.
Yeah.
Walk. Take that walk.
Yeah. So I don't know, Mike, if you have anything else to say. I think our times, I mean, we're 45 minutes into this. I don't know if we could probably
I think we're kind of like around, we're supposed to be around 40, but if anybody knows guys from Jersey, that's the problem. We're both from Jersey. We can talk about things. I think the key thing I think we hit on a lot of topics, and I think looking at some of the information we have here, I think the key thing is, again, for me, I'm not in a good quarter for myself, blood sugar wise. I know that, but I also know what I need to do. And the thing is having the knowledge. And I think the good point there about stevia, know what you're putting into your body, know what type of moving makes you happy. If you want to go HIIT, go do HIIT. If you want to play basketball, play basketball. But a lot of people do walking. It's what's great. And I do. Walking is where I like to be. I also like to lift, but only enough to say I've lifted pretty much. Right. But that's the thing. It's just and I think one of the things, I worked with the ADA up here in the Rochester area about 6 years ago. They did a program opposite of the Tour de Cure called Get Moving. And that was basically everything but biking. And they
Right.
really presented a lot of different ways for you to get moving. And I think it's just even getting up at work, walking for 5 minutes outside, 10 minutes outside. My doctor said the same thing. He said, take 10 to 15 minutes. And he said, that's all you need. And he's right. We want to hit 150 minutes a week of exercise. But you know what? If you only hit 45 minutes, it's not great, but it's better than zero.
Exactly. So, Mike, I appreciate you taking this time. It was great talking to you, and I'm sure we'll do more of this. I love doing stuff like this.
Yes.
This is what I live for, and I hope it looks like there's several people that have really appreciated giving us a little feedback, saying that they appreciate what we're doing. If any of you, I'm sure there's ways of reaching out through the ADA to both of us. Our contact information's out there, and I can certainly put it in the comments, when we're done. But I'm here for anyone that needs it. I'm sure Mike is too. But understand that you're not in this alone, especially if you're newly diagnosed. There's at least 34 million people in this country that are all going through the same thing, and all have had similar experiences. And just understand that you're not alone, and that you're not. You didn't get in this overnight. It didn't happen overnight. It's not gonna. You're not gonna get out of it overnight. And so it's okay if you fall. It's just a matter how quickly you get back up and continue to walk.
And you made one good point there. That's really good, though. Is I think it's important for everybody to remember. I was involved in politics. I've been in marketing and communications for years, but it was during the pandemic when I was sitting there one day and said, I got to do more. I got to do something else. So I do advocate for a couple other organizations as well as the ADA, but I love working with the ADA. And I think this Focus on Diabetes program is a really good one to be involved with. But not everybody has to be where Roger and I are sitting. It's more important to listen and act than it is to sit there. Would we love another person in advocacy? Absolutely. Yeah. But don't feel like you have to push yourself. You got to take care of yourself first. And you know what? You have to be selfish. Let's be very honest. Diabetes is a very selfish disease because you have to be willing to say no sometimes to people who want you to either eat something or not do something which is the right way. It's all good. So yeah, it's like, and I want everybody to know, it's like we also, I am working on a website myself, working on doing some lobbying and legislation. I talk to people constantly. I'm also Lions Club International also has a relationship with major diabetes organizations globally. So I'm my district diabetes chair. And the big project there is creating a program called FLX, which is for Finger Lakes, an acronym, FLX Diabetes. So I'm working on a program that's going to be sponsored by them. And my focus is going to be interesting. You'll like this, Roger. My focus, because I learned this, is going to be men 40 to 65. I'm looking at the Gen X group. Yeah. And the reason why is I've noticed that men who do not take care of themselves, they find out in their 40s. And I've unfortunately known a number of people who have not made it out of their 40s because they haven't taken care of themselves. Yeah. So I think it's a good place where, since I've been through a lot of crap, I have a lot of stories to give. But no, we want to help you out and see the ways that we can. So
perfect.
Appreciate the time, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, have a great day.